everyone. Welcome to Virtual Vegfest Live, our typical Thursday edition at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. We have Calen and Otto today, the Unruly Traveler. She has a new book coming out, and she has traveled on a budget, and that's what all of us kind of typically want to do, is learn how to do as much traveling as she has all over the world, not just the United States. And also, I'm really excited to catch up. I haven't seen her in so long that I just want to hear what's going on. There's a new relationship. I mean, there's so many things. So we're going to get to know Calen today. Let's talk about virtualvegfest.com. You can go there. You can enter our Wishbone contest to win prize packs from Follow Your Heart or gain Crafters Organics, Hodo Foods, and Cinnaholic. Really simple to do that. Just go pick the contest tab, and you can enter to win one of those prize packs that will get shipped to you next month if you win this month's prizes. Thank you to them for donating and being sponsors of Virtual Veg Fest and Triangle Veg Fest and all the events that we do. And a special thank you to Follow Your Heart, followyourheart.com, for sponsoring our July talks for Virtual Veg Fest and Wake Up in Yoga and all the other, and a fireside chat with Kimberly. And we have a new show coming up called The Vegan Stew. If you haven't liked The Vegan Stew on Facebook or our social media, please do. It is a bunch of ladies stirring the pot. It's going to be on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. starting in August. And we're super excited about it. It is going to be uncensored. It'll be real. It'll be conversation. It'll be maybe arguments because we're not always going to agree. But at the end, we're going to show you that we can disagree and still love and care for one another at the end of that hour. And I think that's the most important thing, is that people can have dialogue and not hate each other when they disagree. And that is the vegan stew. Why Am I Vegan? That's another new project that we have going on. You can go to Why Am I Vegan on Facebook, and there's a link there to enter your why. And that's going to go into a website. And you'll join like Dr. McDougall and Nelson Campbell and Slush Rao. We have their whys, and we want to know yours. So let us know by going to the Why Am I Vegan Facebook and sending us your why. Thank you. All right. Anything else I need to say? Probably not. You have any questions or comments, you know to put them in the little box. We will definitely address them. If you love to travel, then this is the right show for you today. And if I did forget anything, well, I'll remember it and tell you later. Here we go. Hey, Calen. How are you?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. I'm really happy about this because I normally see you at least a few times a year in Asheville or here in the Triangle or just somewhere. And it's just, it just hasn't been that, just hasn't been, I haven't seen many people. But let's see, Patricia says, "Hi, Helene, I haven't been able to be here for a while and have a break now to check in. Good info. I'll go to Why Am I Vegan? Yes, I love to travel. That's awesome. Thank you, Patricia. Glad that you're here. And we still need to
Yeah.
talk about her being part of Virtual Veg Fest Live as well. So tell us everything we want to know about you, about what you've been up to, about your book. Give us like the long version."
The long version. Okay, good. That's exciting that it's the long version, because sometimes I'm like, how do I put all of this into one little thing? But I was thinking, I feel like the last time I saw you was in DC at the Animal Rights Conference, maybe. And that was my first one. Like, I've been to other animal rights conferences, but never that specific one. And I'm pretty sure that was the last time I saw you. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
The pandemic has really shaken things up. So yeah, before that, well, first of all, hi everyone. Thank you for joining this live video. I'm excited to talk about travel. I love it. And yeah, I am a queer vegan traveler who does a lot of things on a budget. And I currently, right now, live off grid. In a natural building. And I lived in my van before, on and off a little bit. And yeah, I've learned so much through traveling. I didn't go to college, I went to yoga school. But after high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And so last minute, I got accepted to be an exchange student. Um, fresh out of high school. And so I went to South America for a year and lived with a host family that they only spoke Spanish. I only spoke English. I was also vegan at the time, which was very different from like that household and that culture. So that was really my first introduction into travel, was just like being shipped away for a year to out of the country, which I'd never been before except for in Canada on like a school trip for a weekend or something. So that was really my first experience with travel. And while I was there, you know, I would backpack with my friends and go to other countries. And something just clicked for me. I'm like, this is a fast tracked way to learn things. I was seeing perspectives I had never seen before, meeting all types of people and learning a new language. And I really fell in love with it. And it just feels like it's been essential to my growth just as a human being over the years. So at first, I would start out doing really, really budget travel trips across the U.S. My first one, I did a GoFundMe, got a bike, and before that, I had actually broken my foot, and I was teaching yoga at the time, so I wasn't able to teach or make any money. So I didn't really have any money, and I biked and hitchhiked and couch surf and all of these things my way across the US. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can travel with almost no money. Because I started that trip with a $200, we still don't remember if it's $200 or $300 gift card that my mom gave me, that she's like, you have to take this. But I was like, whoa, there's so many more ways to travel. Like, this can make it accessible to more people. So I've crossed the US numerous times back and forth like that, just with my backpack, taking the cheapest buses, just meeting people and catching rides from them, meeting people staying at their houses, and then eventually expanded budget backpacking into other countries. So that's what I've been up to over the past, you know, few years. And after that first trip, it was actually a while after that first trip, I sat down and I wrote a guidebook about how you can do this sort of budget travel. And it really breaks everything down, like how to find food. We go over dumpster diving, and we talk about ways where you can ask to work for food, like getting jobs along the way. We talk about where to stay. So we talk about staying in hostels and using couch surfing and warm showers and all these apps that you can use for free. And we even have a section on food, which, thanks to my partner, was greatly expanded, where we talk about, of course, it's all plant based. So we talk about veganism, we dive into the ethics, and then we talk about, you know, which things are best to bring on the road while you're traveling for your budget and all of these things. So that book right now, we're trying to find the best printer for it, and then it will be a real thing that you can hold in your hands. So yeah, all this that I've learned over the years has kind of accumulated into this book, and that's my next big thing coming out, aside from the normal travels. So I hope that was a good intro. I definitely took the long way around.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm. Okay, so those are my dogs. And they're not in the room, but they're downstairs, and someone is clearly at my door because they are going ballistic. Yeah, and that's, you know, imagine if they were with me like they used to be like a year ago. It would be much louder. So
Yeah.
no one's coming in the house with those three. I mean, not that they're not ferocious, but boy, did they look it right now. I don't even need to see them. So
They
that
sound
is,
like it.
yeah, I know. Don't come in. So, and the door's open. So like literally someone could, they could walk in, but I wouldn't. Marshall will bite your head off. So just be warned if you had to come while I'm live. So unbelievable, like
Yeah.
what you're doing or what you've done, because obviously I followed along. Let's not forget this one piece that you haven't shared. You have a blog.
Yes, I do have a blog, and I have a podcast that goes along with that blog. So if you go to unrulytravel.com, like even while you're watching or after this, you can see like my adventures through the podcasts and videos and photos and articles. And I also have a lot of free guides, like this is how to travel Thailand on budget. These are mistakes I made. Don't do this. So there's things like that. And then the coolest people that I meet, the most interesting people. For example, there's a man named Glenn who I met in Puerto Rico, who feeds like a couple hundred cats every night, and he's done it for I think like 13 years now. I'll do interviews with them and share their story. So there's also activism involved, and every time I do animal rights activism or rescue animals, like the Hurricane Florence years ago was a big rescue and different things like that. I usually do a podcast episode about it, or it's very controversial, but years ago at Smithfield, one of the biggest, pig slaughterhouses in the world, I got arrested with a handful of other people. So there's like a podcast about that, and then an article, and they're always about like what that experience was like and why even do that in the first place. So there's so much on the blog from it's all around travel and alternative living, but it's also activism as well. So it's a really interesting place to just kind of click around and see what you find.
Exactly. And let's just touch on that for a second, because if you don't know, we're both in North Carolina. We just happen to be in different parts of the state. You're in Asheville right now. I'm in the Triangle in Wake Forest, North Carolina. So we're about 3.5, 4 hours apart in this state. And here in the Triangle, we're about 2 hours from the East Coast, the East Wilmington-ish. And in
Mm-hmm.
that section of North Carolina is there are more pigs than humans, and it is the second largest producer of pigs in the country. And that's what happens here. And that's why the activism is, we're known, North Carolina is known as a hotbed of activism for trying to stop the pig industry from being
Yeah.
what the pig industry is. And we're known for that. Like Gene Bauer has come here and done like a little mini documentary about it with Lelani Munter, because we're just known for that. They've taken money that there was left as a donation to Farm Sanctuary and did that mini documentary here because they want to make it known. And you got arrested.
Yeah. Yeah, along with 11 other people. And by the way, none of it was really planned. Because you were there at that event, right? You
Nope.
weren't?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's such a blur for me because it was so intense. So I always imagine people there who weren't. And I'm always like, remember when this happened? And they're like, no, I wasn't there. And I was like, are you sure? um, yeah, that was an intense time because earlier just in my life I lived in Wilmington, so I would frequent the slaughterhouse and do the vigils and document and do videos on my blog and things like that. And then I moved to Asheville, but every once in a while I do go back because I feel like it's so important. And yeah, I mean, the plan was not to be arrested there, but there were so many activists. And I really, our goal was to stop a slaughter truck and to liberate one animal. That was the goal. That was the hope. We were like, if we could do this, whew, that would just be so symbolic. It's so important for that one animal. Let's give it a try while we have all these people and the support. And instead, we just got arrested. But it still was, I think, a big learning experience for people. And we did get a lot of like headlines and more people interested in, oh, why'd you get arrested? And then you get to talk about the pigs and the environmental racism and all of those things. So yeah, I feel like it was really important that that happened, and I felt like the energy that we brought to that protest met um, met the severity of the situation. I never feel like, oh, what can I do that like actually meets the level of horrific things that are happening, and that protest only felt a sliver of the way there, but it was the closest I ever felt to like this is the energy that's like truly needed sometimes. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, you're welcome. I remember. I've the piece that I remember the most, probably because I was on the outside looking in, was the call for bail money.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's that's the way I was thinking, like, if you, and I guess with not knowing that you were going into, sometimes you go into those vigils with the idea that you are going to get arrested, and you do prepare for the bail money, but that was not the
Hmm.
case this time.
Hmm.
So that's one of
No, and that's the thing. A lot of times, I feel like the activists which is not all the time, of course, but a lot of times the activists who do get arrested just don't have a lot of money, and a lot of times it seems like it's young people who are just like, we figured at the last minute we're probably going to get arrested, and we didn't plan this out well, and we knew that was a thing, before we did it, like, but we weren't planning for weeks, like, here's the bail money, here's this. So it was all very last minute, which is a very privileged thing to be able to do, because, you're working with the police system, and if no one bails you out, well, then you don't get out, and that experience can go so different for so many people. So it was a big risk. But yeah, bail money is so important, especially when you have activists. A lot of activists that are younger don't have a lot of money. And so a lot of us are willing to do direct action and things like that, but we really need support from other people, because a lot of activists do spend a lot of time doing, on the ground or direct action, and are not committed to a solid full-time job, because it's hard to do both. So that was a huge piece of that.
Right. And that is a great segue into, budgeting and travel because young people don't have a lot of funds. I mean, I backpacked through Europe for a month when I was 24. I did have a bit of money behind me, but I chose the
Mm-hmm.
hostel route and planes and trains and ferries and buses and foot and car, and I went every it was a hovercraft, which was the coolest thing in the whole world, to take a hovercraft across the channel to go between France and England. In Paris, I'll do the story. I was in Paris and I needed to get back to England because I was flying out of England, out of London, and I don't speak French and they don't really speak English. And I took the ferry across.
Yeah.
And when I went to book this, they were like, oh, we have this. And I was like, I don't know what that is. But they were like, you can go on this at such and such time. And I was like, okay. So I made my way to wherever that was, and it was a hovercraft, and basically it was deflated when I went onto it, and the inside looked like airplane seats, and then they put cars on it. It was really big. The hovercraft is what it hovers over the water to get to one side to the next, and then they inflated it, and we went up, and next thing I know, we were floating across the water. Like one of the coolest experiences I've ever had.
What?
And I didn't intend to. I intended to take a ferry. And this is the best thing ever. So thank you, person who we didn't understand each other's languages. Yeah. That's like traveling. So I get the traveling, and like anything can happen, and anything can happen with who you meet because I've done it. I met the best people just
Mhm.
kind of like in the tube system in England. I met people from Brazil that helped me find where I was going to live while I was in England for a few weeks. Just because I was on the wrong side of the tracks, like the train was never going to come, and this boy was like, "Come, come," and I was like, "Okay, this person's asking me to come. Okay," and I went on, and
Oh my gosh.
that started like a whole relationship started there. I went to England for a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks, when I was younger than 24, and obviously thankful that I had the ability to even do that. But yeah, it was. I
Yeah.
get it. I get that it's organic, like this podcast. Anything can be spoken about. Anything can happen, and you hope you're safe. You just be street smart, and you
Yeah.
go. So I mean, hostels, eating the bread and fruit that's served to you in the hostel, washing your socks in the sink, because you
Yeah.
don't bring a lot of stuff with your backpacking.
Yes.
Totally get it. So please share. I mean, you've gone to
Yes.
Europe, you've gone across this country, you've gone to Africa, you've gone to Puerto Rico. I mean, you've gone to
Hmm.
South America, you've gone to so many places. Which do you want to bring up first?
Oh, wow. You know what I would really love to bring up first, actually, is Asia, because I got to go for the first time, I think that was a couple years ago now, a few years ago. And I spent time in Thailand, and I went to the Elephant Nature Park there, which I was like, okay, this looks really interesting. This is the most ethical like elephant park that I have seen. You know, they don't let you touch the elephants, you can only see them. So all your duties are like cleaning stalls or transporting bananas or whatever, but you're not hands on with the elephants, which I think is really important. So I had no idea how awesome it was going to be. And actually, my best friend who went vegan after we met when I was an exchange student met me there. She's from Denmark. And so we spent a month in Thailand together and we spent a week at Elephant Nature Park. I had no idea it was this amazing, like, animal rights cool hub, and the founders of it are vegan, they're animal rights activists, and there were so many different types of animals there. I mean, there were elephants, there were cows, monkeys, uh, pigs, like your typical farmed animals, like chickens, all of those, and then like, yeah, like I said, like monkeys and dogs and cats, and it was incredible. I always think of that now when I think of Asia. That's like my first memory that comes up. And that's also a great place to just be. I think Thailand is one of the more expensive ones there on that continent, but um, there's like Vietnam, I've heard is very, very cheap, which I'd like to go in the future. But that was an awesome place to be a budget traveler, go meet other people. You know, we went to the Elephant Nature Park, and my whole idea was to go because I want to create a small docu-series about just big problems that we're facing, but how can we bring them down to earth and find solutions? And so while I was there, it kind of unfolded. Like, one of the problems is animal tourism, which there specifically, it's like elephants, which we also have here in the US. There, it's just more prominent and different. So there, it's like using them for work and for entertainment and all of these things. And then it's like, okay, so what's the solution? When you're traveling, you don't participate in that. But if you still want to see elephants, what's something you can do instead? An elephant nature park. Oh my goodness, it's a dream. So the whole time we were there, we were filming for that, which is my next project to put together actually after the book, which will be like a tiny docu-series hopefully in the future. But it was just so awesome. We met people at the park who were, from all over the world, all these different countries, and we actually ended up liking each other so much that we formed our own little travel group and traveled Thailand together after that. So it was just a great example of how you can do incredible things on a budget, even as a vegan, and meet awesome people and travel with them. If I would have done that trip on my own, which many trips I do on my own, this one I just, happened to meet up with my friend and it was perfect timing and we travel great together. But when I travel on my own, I meet so many people. I'm like never actually on my own because I always find someone, and they're always the coolest people that I keep in touch with. So I know a lot of people have fears about traveling by themselves, but a lot of times you're not by yourself, and your story showed that too. Like, you're on the wrong side of, the line that you're supposed to be on travel, and then someone comes up and then you start a conversation. Things like that have happened to me so many times, and it's all of the most wonderful people that I know in my life came out of those weird situations. So I really, really like that you brought that up. And I wonder if anyone, like, or if you, like, is there a place like, yeah, because I've done North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, different parts of each. Is there any place that you're like, oh, I haven't been here? What is that specific thing like? Because there are so many places, and yeah, I'd be interested to see what our audience, if they're like, oh, can you talk about this place? Because I've always wanted to go there.
Yeah, that'd be great. If anyone has those questions, please share them in the comments, and we'll definitely address them. Thank you, Kellen, for offering that, because it's pretty neat. I traveled by myself too, and I was a big fan because one of the main reasons I enjoyed it was that if I decided to change the plans, I didn't have to negotiate it with somebody else. Like, I was supposed to go to Rome, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt single traveler, female. There was a lot of crime. I didn't want to deal with it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Italy, I was like, ah. So I traded Rome for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. and just went to Zurich. Actually, not to Zurich. I went to Lausanne because I loved Zurich and I love Switzerland. Went to Lausanne, went to Munich, and then went to Dachau to see the concentration camp, and went to Salzburg, Austria, and did the Sound of Music tour, which was like a dream.
Oh,
So and saw Mozart's childhood home. I mean, there was like so many things, and I could have gone to Rome. So there was a great
yeah.
trade off. But
Yeah.
with another person, that would have been hard because that person has to be like, oh well, I was planning on this, and you just pull out. When I did it, it was not phones. It was a pull out the map, train schedule, map of the world, my Let's Go Europe book, my Eurail pass, and
Yep.
let me schedule how I'm going to do all these things. Where are the hostels? Where will I stay? All done with paper
Hmm.
and a pencil,
Yes.
and just getting on the trains. And I wish I had stayed longer. Let's put it that way. I traveled for a month. I wish I'd stayed longer. I absolutely loved it. So Patricia said I love to travel by myself in Italy. That is awesome. And
Yes.
we're going. We're
That is
going. Go ahead.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Italy is
Oh,
I'd like.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, when I first did my trips across the US back and forth, it was such a learning process. I didn't even know if it was gonna work. Like, can I do work trades? I had never done a work trade before. Can I do all of these different things? I had no idea. So sometimes I like to try things like that out by myself. It's not that I'm afraid of failing in front of someone, it's that I want room to learn and grow without having to make decisions with someone and having to process those experiences with someone else. Um, so now that I feel like I've got a lot of travel on my belt, I'm more open to traveling with people because I feel like I've learned a lot of the lessons that can come with first traveling by yourself or traveling out of the country or traveling like alternatively on a budget. And so now I can see a lot of those experiences coming and I'm more comfortable with them. But yeah, I used to be like very strict. I'm traveling by myself and I'll meet people as I go because I have no idea what I'm doing and where I'm going to end up. And I still like to do that a lot. And now my boundary is that I will travel with someone, but you have to know that I kind of want it to be open and organic, and I want us to be able to change plans. So, if through your trip that means you're not traveling with this person anymore that you started with, that's okay too. So I love that you talked about that because I feel like so many people are afraid to travel by themselves, but it's like the best thing.
It
And
really
I saw
is.
that
Yeah.
comment. Oh, I saw that comment that said Machu Picchu and Scotland are on my list, which is awesome. Scotland is on my list too. And I actually did Machu Picchu when I was an exchange student. And it was quite an experience because you have to take a bus to get to a certain spot, and then you have to hike in or take another bus along the train tracks. And so when you're on a budget, it's just a lot of hiking because you don't, it's the least expensive version. And so actually, when I was there, my host brother was like, you don't need your passport to get on the bus. We decided to take the bus because we didn't have a lot of time to go see everything. And I was like, "Are you sure? I feel like I should bring it." And he's like, "No, leave it at the hostel we're staying at. It'll be safer." And I was like, I was really young, I had first just started budget traveling. I'm like, he knows. He's older than me. He's like 10 years older than me. He's traveled a lot. I didn't bring my passport. They wouldn't let me on the bus. I had to run up the side of the mountain with like three other friends to get to the top. Once we get to the top, we only had like 45 minutes to see everything because it's kind of remote. So there's like buses going in and out, and you have to stick with the schedule. And so, like, I hardly got to relax and see it. And then before we went to go back down, my boyfriend at the time was carrying one of my bags and he set it down somewhere up there in the maze. So then we had to run around to find my bag and then run back down. And, gosh, I have pictures of that trip, and a lot of my friends just took pictures of my sweat marks because I was sweating so bad. Um, And then my friend twisted her ankle when we were walking back. So it was such an interesting experience. I always think of that when people are like, Machu Picchu, because you have this bright, bold expectation of what it's going to be like. And mine was just totally different. And it's such a sacred place. So I'd love to go back and like give it another shot. Because that was quite an adventure for me. I thought you might enjoy that story.
Thank you, Susan, for bringing that up. Susan's awesome. Susan's in Asheville. You can have lunch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Susan's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Matter of fact, because you're in Asheville, and Susan, you might have to help me out here. There's a French restaurant on, what is it? Was it Roosevelt? What's the street that Rosetta's is on?
I know what street you mean. I'm just not good with the
Right?
names.
So
That
you
main street.
right, you know where Haywa is there, and you have the Dabra tea room, right? And there's like a French restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like an alleyway where
Mm-hmm.
the next right, like it's part of the French restaurant. Lexington. Okay, thank you, Susan. Susan's art is on the wall in that restaurant, which you can go visit. It's amazing.
What?
Yeah, absolutely amazing. There's like they commissioned her
That
to
is
do the
so
art.
great.
Yes. So you can, next time I would go to Haywa and Rosetta. So just go eat at both places. Bushan is the name of the restaurant. I mean, it's not, you're probably not going to eat there, but
Yes.
we walked in and just went and just looked at the art, and it was beautiful. Susan is incredibly talented, and it's there. So, and you can go look at that, which hopefully you'll be down that way soon.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm always looking for new things to find in Asheville. Because once you're here for a while, you're like, oh, I've gone to all these places. You know, you start repeating the same places because you like them so much. So that is awesome. And I've been thinking about writing an alternative guide to Asheville. So I might just have to go in and take a picture of that or, direct people there. So thank you. Thanks, Susan, for bringing that up
Oh, that's
or
wild.
for just popping in.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely wild. That'd be really cool because I mean, Susan's vegan, and I can't remember if she was vegan when she did that, but because it was a while ago that she did the art. But it's really neat. We talked about it over dinner at Plant, and then we drove over and she showed us. So I would I'd definitely go check it out.
Yay, that's awesome.
So back to travel. Obviously, I've traveled a lot too, and the organic nature of meeting people. And people always say you're female, how could you travel by yourself? And if you really think about it, you probably will psych yourself out because yes, bad things can happen.
Mhm.
I mean, I've heard people say I won't stay in a hostel because they watched the movie Hostel, and I was like, yeah, I never saw the movie, but I've stayed in them. We're okay. And my mistake
Yeah.
when I first went to England, I was going to be there for a month, is how much stuff I brought. Because I read in the books the things that you should bring. And they also say bring a
Hmm.
lock for your stuff in the hostel because you need to lock all your stuff up because you're sharing rooms with other people. And I got into this room and their shit was like all over the place. All the other girls in there, their stuff was just open everywhere, and I'm like, everything. I'm from New York, so everything's like tight and like holding on to stuff. And I was like, this is complete opposite of what I read or what I understood. And funny story about that because serendipity, there were two German girls in that hostel. I stayed in Notting Hill before Notting Hill was like before the movie, and it was like really a nice place. Notting Hill was not the best part of London, and I found another place because of these Brazilians that I'd met, but no cell phones. So I kind of got this information from Pablo, and then I left the hostel and went and moved to this other place. And I don't have any way to get in touch after that. So I went to a museum because in London, museums are free after like 3 p.m., I think is what it was. So I went to the museum, and then in the museum, I see one of the German girls from the hostel. And she says, hey, 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 you got a phone call from the Brazilian that I missed, but I happened to see her randomly in the museum in London. And I was like, oh. So I called. And that led to like 2 weeks of friendship while for my whole time that I was there, including like everything was serendipitous that trip. Meeting him on the tube system, to them helping me find a place to stay, which led to the girl that I was bunking with who needed someone to help her out, and like living in London as opposed to like hosteling in London. I ended up in a student's housing type thing, and then hanging out with them. I mean, but obviously the odds are 100% because it happened, but I stayed in a hostel with two German girls. One of them showed up in a museum at the same time as me, told me I got a phone message that led me to making those phone calls to like leading to like a really, really fun time. And like for my trip, that's why traveling alone is awesome, because you're really never alone unless you want to be alone, because Europe is very different from here. People, well, one, there's people from all over the world that are there, and they are incredibly engaging, and they're so used to people from all over the place, and you all meeting. I mean, when you're traveling in countries where English isn't the number one language, isn't the prominent language, you can't eavesdrop, which is really weird. But when you hear someone speaking English, you just gravitate to them because you're like, I just want to have a conversation. I was like, I understand you. Let's talk just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
American, Australian, or English. That's what happens.
Yes.
All right, so Susan said she wasn't muted
Yes,
at the
that
beginning.
is.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I love you talking about that because that is so true. When you travel alone, I feel like you're never really alone unless you want to be, which you said perfectly. And I've had so many, I love those stories that you told because I just feel like there's kind of extra magic in the air sometimes when you're traveling. And by the way, people have said, like I've heard too, I'm never staying in a hostel because of the movie Hostel. Well, I've never watched it and I'm never going to because I don't want to think about that. Like I know things that can happen. I've talked to other travelers, I've imagined everything. I don't need to see it in a movie compact. So that's my advice to people. Just don't watch it. There's some things people are like, oh, I'd never travel because I watched this. I'm like, put that on my list of things not to watch, learn about the issue, be as safe as I can. Because a lot of things that can happen when you travel can also happen when you're at home, and some places that you travel are way safer than where you live at home or where you go on a daily basis. So it's also a lot about specific location and your awareness. Like, I'm not telling people not to drink, but when I do travel on my own, I don't really drink anyways. But, I do go out to places by myself at night sometimes that are close to my hostel. And I always make sure that I'm walking back on a lit street that's busy with lots of people and I don't drink so I can, stay out late and do whatever. And I have heard a lot of bad stories of things happening to people, which is terrible. So it's good to just keep things in mind. Like it's sad that we even have to think about it, but it's really good to know what could happen. Be as safe as you can, but you don't have to indulge in all the horror stories because then you will maybe never leave. And you never even it could have been an amazing, wonderful trip and you never got the chance to find out. So I love you talking about that. And I've done that too before traveling where I meet people and they're amazing. And when I did my bike tours, I started out doing that with a paper map. I know there was GPS at the time, but I guess I just wasn't using it a ton. And so the bike tours that I was doing was along the Trans-America Trail, and it's a paper map that comes with it. So I had to get back into learning how to read a paper map. So now I'm really drawn to guidebooks and paper maps and things like that because when you're in another country, if you're not paying for cell phone service, you don't know if you're going to have Wi-Fi, service is unreliable. So I really like a good old-fashioned paper map, and I like the adventure of, you know, traveling and learning about places without technology. It's awesome to read reviews, especially like when you're trying to stay as safe as possible. But people locally or people who are also traveling or have already done that are great resources to figure out where to go, what to eat, all of these things. Like they know where all the cool things are and they know the best safety tips. So I really like that you brought that up because I feel like that's going out of style a little bit. And with my guidebook, I hope to bring that back in style a little bit. Like, take this book with you so you can refer to it. And if you run out of service, no problem. Like, it's here in your hands, you know? It's right here.
Yeah, I would love that because we're actually going to Europe in January. We're gonna go for 3 weeks, and I'm going to document the whole
Oh
thing,
wow.
and start in Spain, do Spain, go to Portugal, throwing out there to maybe make our way to like Morocco because I was like, yo, we're so close. You kind of like,
Yeah.
because then I go to another continent, which is incredibly
Yeah.
enticing. But then also going up through the south of France and going into Switzerland because I love Switzerland so much, and going into Italy and going to see Steven's family. And I mean, I was like, can we go to Munich? I want a pretzel. I mean, you just have these things that make you go, let's, and everything's so
Yeah.
close. And we're going to drive. So everything is so close. It's very different from here. And it'll be a completely different trip than like how you did it. I mean, this I consider like more like an adult trip, but still organic because I don't want to set any I don't want to be like, well, we're gonna go here for 2 days, and then we're gonna move, and then we're gonna go do this, and then we gotta move, and like we gotta go here and this and that. I don't want to be like that. I want to go somewhere and be like, wow, this is a shocker and unbelievable. Like I was supposed to be in Zurich when I was 24 for like overnight, and I extended the trip I think for 3 days because I loved Switzerland so
Mm-hmm.
much that I didn't want to leave. Then you can do that when it's your trip. And that I really encourage people
Yes.
to do more of that and just be more organic and travel and everything you'll be afraid of in Europe or any place in the world can easily happen here or whatever country you're in. It can happen there, and you can get hit by a bus
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world. So you can't live in fear. You just have to be street smart, which is I think something you've continuously said throughout this. Is I mean, especially
Mm-hmm.
single female, be smart, be street smart, watch where you're going, well lit. Don't go down any alleys, but don't go down any alleys wherever you live that's dark and by yourself. It's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
smart. you know
Yeah.
I would love
Yeah.
to. I mean, how did you? I mean, not everyone's going to want to do this, but people who are younger, like your age or younger, maybe a little older than you, because I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't want to. I don't want to travel and have to go figure out like how I'm going to pay for things. But you did.
Yeah.
So how did you get like? I mean, I kind of know how you did it, but tell us how you like said, "I'll work for food. Let me come do this." I mean, and being received really well, especially in this country. I'd like to go back to this country because Europe, I already know that
Yeah.
you can get work, and it's easier to do that, figure out that negotiation because there's so many people traveling like that. But in this country, not so much.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because obviously things are changed right now with the pandemic where people aren't doing things in person, a lot of people are laid off, different things like that. So now is definitely not the ideal time to be like, I'm gonna go figure it out as I go. Not a great time to do that. Um, but also, I feel like to even start the conversation, there's a lot that does have to do with privilege, like with being white and different things like that. Also, looking like a straight cisgendered person, even though I'm not. A lot of people perceive me like that. And then also, there's a big difference because I think, which I've learned, which is sad, that people will perceive you differently. Like if you're unhoused compared to someone who came in who looked like me, who looked like a traveler, because I had my backpack and my biking shorts and things like that. So there's a lot of privilege and like weight that goes into the discussion. But for me, my personal experience was I did not know if it would work. I heard that some lady, this is what I heard once. I never looked it up to see if it was true, but I heard that some lady did talks around the US and that wherever she was talking next would pay for her bus ticket or her, whatever ticket, and that's how she got around. And so I'm like, oh, what if I did that style? And, I kind of did that, but I went from place to place and I'm not a speaker. So I could teach yoga while I'm there, whatever. And it just turned out that I would go into places, for example, for food, because I brought a lot of Cliff Bars with me, but that was it. So every day it was like going into a new place, explaining what I was doing. So I'd be like, hey, I'm Calen. I'm doing this bike trip across the US on very little funds. And I know this is not very normal, but could I work for food for, odd jobs that you have? And so I would get random odd jobs a lot, like smashing boxes behind a dumpster, or sweeping the parking lot. Or this one time I stayed at this guy's house because his maid was like off for a week or something. I think I stayed there 4 days. I cleaned his house, watched his kid. He worked at a restaurant, so I would get all the free food. Um, and I found that job because I went into a restaurant and asked to work for food, and the owner was like, we can't do that. But my brother's maid is out of town. So random things would happen like that the whole time. I ended up, like, I would clean the tops of RVs at one point. I worked for a catering company at the end of that bike trip where I made enough money to buy a plane ticket to Hawaii. Like, that was the first time I had ever been there. And that was not on my list of things to do. But I kept falling upon work, and then I could, work somewhere, and I'd camp out in my tent or stay in the people's houses. Or one time I even cleaned a furniture store. It was like this local furniture store, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for work. Do you have anything? And the whole place needed dusted and all this stuff. So the guy like gave me all the cleaning supplies. I don't remember how much he gave me, but yeah, a lot of it is definitely privilege. And some of it is like, I didn't know if it would work, but I would just go in and do it. And sometimes you get turned down, but I felt like I got into a groove because I was doing it consistently day after day. And then also on that trip, the Transamerica like maps that I had, the paper maps I was talking about, they have different churches you can stay at and different parks you can camp out at. And the churches are used to people coming through because they are on the Transamerica Trail, which is just a normal road system across the US that people like to bike. It's not an actual trail. Um, and those churches would have food that bikers would leave, or they've had like bulk pasta, bulk oatmeal, things like that. So you just get into it and you find out, wow, there's so many ways to do this. And I never imagined that I would be doing XYZ, cleaning the tops of campers, being on this crew that's making food and serving at a wedding, which was another thing that I did. Like I had no idea that these were going to happen. But they started happening. And I don't travel like this now because I have work online for a few different animal rights organizations that I can take with me. But I do pull bits and pieces of it still. Like I'll still take cheap buses. I'd still hitchhike. I'd still ride share from Craigslist. I still couch surf. I would still wolf and do work trades. But now I do have a little bit more of a budget. So that in between time when you're like, how do I get to one place to another? I'm like, okay, I get there on a budget and then I figure it out as I go. So yeah, I feel like there's different comfort levels with everyone and there's different safety levels that you need. And over time, now you're like, I don't want to do that. Where when you're in your 20s, you might be okay with that. So I'm in that in between stage where I'm like, I want to do that sometimes. I want to pull these pieces out of it, but I also know where I want to go. And so I'm going to use the money that I do make to do that. So yeah, my guidebook too is all about like taking little bits and pieces of budget travel and putting it into your travel story if you don't want to do the complete out on the road, have no idea what's happening next. So that was a really good question. Thank you. It's nice to reflect and see how my travel style has kind of changed over the years.
It is really cool. And your most recent travel that you got home, I looked at the post that you said you went in your van and you kind of went over like how much money it cost, but you also did the caveats. We already had the van. We had to retrofit the van. I love the fact that you like the cabinets, whatever that were put in there, were painted. It was like really easy to do because your partner did all that. And it was like it
Yeah.
was really neat, and that you bought a lot of food to go with you, and that you splurged on some dining meals, but not a lot. And you had a flat tire, right? You had like you kind of
Yeah.
encapsulated like all these things that happened into how much did it cost you to travel the country? How long were you gone?
That trip was 2 months, but I would say that that trip was more prepared for because I was not working during those 2 months. So my partner and I don't really plan or budget, but he does. He's like good at it. So he was like, let's do some sort of budget and let's get food ahead of time. So he really spurred me into action there. And so it was nice to record it to show people like, this is what we started with, and then this is here much like how much we spent. So yeah, if anyone wants to read that and see the complete budget breakdown, you can go to my website and read that because I think it really helps people get an idea of what they might spend if they want to do that. So that was a 2 month trip, and we're planning another 2 month trip. So hopefully it'll be just as fun.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, that's amazing. It's not something that I'm pretty sure that's not something. I mean, I thought about it, but RV wise, 3 dogs, 2 cats. I mean, it's you can't we can just leave them for that. Well, I guess we could
Yeah.
for 3 weeks, but it costs a lot of money to leave them. So, and traveling the
Yeah.
country would be cool, but in an RV, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel. It does cross my mind lately since we do a lot of travel for the events, and an RV would be beneficial for that because we're doing a lot of travel for the events, but then we still need a vehicle. It's like there's so many things you think of and go, well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they'd be great if that's all we were doing, but when we go do these festivals,
Yeah.
we actually need to be able to drive around and not just drive an RV around. Do I want to look at a car and then gas mileage and price of gas, and then you kind of adult wise, you kind of try to start balancing stuff out with, a hybrid vehicle. Well, then I'm good. It's because that's where I'm in
Yeah.
now. I was like, we can just take the hybrid and be like, oh, we get really far and not a lot of
Yeah.
gas. Not sleeping in
Yeah.
it, but, Airbnbs, hotel points, I'm like a bit older than you. So it's like, and I don't, yeah, I'm done with the sleeping on like rocks and stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
nope, it's not happening anymore.
I completely understand. I also feel like, sometimes you just earn the right to not even have to do that. Like, you just come to a certain point where you're like, this is not going to happen anymore. But it could still be a fun adventure. So I like that you're thinking about it because that's the thing with everyone traveling. There's so many different like angles and different things that go into their trips, different elements that people have. Like some people have kids, some have animals. So that's the interesting thing about travel. It's never going to be the same for two people because there's so many things that go into it.
Right, and personality. And there's one thing that you said that you mentioned that I feel is really, really important for both of us to mention, and that it does apply for us, is privilege. Is I also have the
Mm-hmm.
privilege of being a white female that always looks younger than I actually am, especially when I was in my 20s and 30s. And
Mm-hmm.
I come across as honest and trustworthy. And I mean, I am, but I come across that way. People feel comfortable, they
Mm-hmm.
do open up. I'm more than aware that the color of my skin has a lot to do with that. And if it was different, it was darker, that I might not get the reception that I get and receive to this
Yeah.
day. And being female, there is privilege of being female. I'm not going to deny that. I'm a fan of it. Sorry, men, we do have privilege as females. I don't like mansplaining, but I do get that as a female, some doors do open up that do not open up for men. But, men talking to
Yeah.
women maybe get
And it's a
that too.
trade-off because
Yeah. Good.
yeah, it is a trade-off because sometimes people might be more willing to help you because you're female, but then at the same time, you're in more danger. Like, I couldn't walk alone at night through my own town, let alone a new town,
Right.
where men I know, white men I know are like, no problem, let's go on a walk.
Right.
So I think there's the trade-off that comes with that sometimes.
No, I agree 100%. But I really appreciate that you brought that into your conversation because it would be even more privileged to kind of be like, well, you can do this too. Well, we both understand that no, not everybody can do that. If you can't run down the street in a
Yeah,
neighborhood in Atlanta in Georgia without losing your life, then you definitely can't go knocking on a door asking
exactly.
for help. So, I mean, that's another funny
Right.
story.
Exactly.
on Long Island, there's in between the forks, there's a thing called Shelter Island, and you have to take a ferry to it. It's very funny. So I went with like an ex, like this is a long time ago, and we went to Shelter Island. And what you do is like there's like this cute little area. Then it's like people live there, and you can walk it. What I didn't know, what I didn't know is that there's ferries on both sides. So we were following the signs to the ferry, but it was the other side of the island, which was actually a lot. It was far, and it got to the point where I had to I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can't. This is ridiculous. like, we have no. I'm gonna go knock on a door, as I said. And then can you imagine? I mean, granted, it was a long time ago, but I did. I knocked on this person's door, and they drove us to the right ferry. Because
Oh my gosh.
I
That's
think I
awesome.
needed to go to the bathroom. It was hot. I was like, this is, and realizing, I think we realized it was the wrong ferry we were walking to, and we'd walked so far, and then we had to turn around and like go backwards. And I was like, there's just no way. So yeah, I knocked on a person's door, asked for help. They got in their car and drove us. Thank you.
I'm so happy when things like that happen. When it goes well.
Yes. And part of that is I'm approachable. I'm aware of that,
Hmm.
and not everybody comes off that way. So for a myriad of reasons, not just color of skin. So that's yeah, obviously have some
Yeah.
stories too. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me and letting us catch up. I mean, I really hope to see you. I'll be in Greenville on August 15th if you're around, because it's not that far from you. If you want to come to Greenville Fun Fest, and I'll be in Asheville October 3rd for Asheville Veganfest. But I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I'll be there.
If you want to come over to Knoxville on August 22nd. So I'm going to be all around you. And then I'll be there on
Yes.
October 3rd. So that week, that's super exciting. So Calen, how do people get in touch with you when I have everything you need people to know?
Yes. So first of all, I will be at Asheville Vegan Fest because Kim Biller has handed the nonprofit Sanctuary Tour over to me. I'm now doing the podcast and all of those things. I'll also have on my table there like travel information. Hopefully, my book should be my book by then too. You can get there. So it'll be Sanctuary Tour and some vegan travel stuff as well. But if you go to unrulytravel.com and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can find all my social media links. So like Instagram, Facebook, things like that. And then when you get to the website, a pop-up will show up and you can enter your email address. And I don't send out a lot of emails, but when there is a new article or I'm launching something like this book, that will show up there. So that's the best way to stay up to date with everything. And I did transfer my URL over. So if the unrulytravel.com doesn't work on your computer, go to wanderwoman.online and it's WANDER. Um, yeah, and from there you can find the YouTube and the podcast and all of those things. And if you did like this interview, then you'll probably really like the podcast because it's a lot of activism and travel tales and interesting stories like what we talked about today. So yeah, go find me in all those places, and the book will be out. Hopefully, it'll be printed within the next couple weeks and be available for people. So yay! Thank you for having me. I'm so glad I got to come on and catch up and hear some of your travel stories, which are interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that more.
I would love to do that. I mean, I can't wait to actually put my hands on you and give you a big hug. So, thank
Yes,
you. I'm so
yes.
glad that we did this and that you're part of Asheville Vegan Fest. And yeah, like I said, if you want to come to more of them,
Yay.
let me know. If you want to come to more of them and share
Heck
this,
yeah.
because you can, because we have so many.
Yes.
And they're
Yes.
not far from you. I'll talk to you about that offline. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Yes.
I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye,
Yay,
Kellen.
thank you. Bye.
Well, everyone, thank you once again for joining Virtual Vegfest Live. Really appreciate it. And of course, I have no clue what's happening next week because it is wild over here with all these festivals happening. Oh, that's right. Pastor Beth from Wholesome Works will be next week, rescheduled from previous time, but you don't know that, I do. That'll be on the 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, just like today. And that'll be a great one. And we're only on Thursdays now. because things have gotten really busy with in-person events. We have an event this weekend, Sunday, in Leesville, South Carolina, a fundraiser for Cotton Branch. Great friends of ours. It's called the Main Street Fair, and it's on the street, on Main Street in Leesville, South Carolina. And that's where we're going to be from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. And we have a great amount of vendors. You can go like that page or that event on Facebook to learn more details, or go to themainevent.org. And of course, donate to Cotton Branch, because, why not? We do it monthly. You can do it too. As simple as that. There's so many sanctuaries. At least choose one to give some money to. That would be amazing. And then other than that, remember, enter the contest. There's not a lot of days left in July. We'll start over in August. But if you want to win the prize packs for this month, go and enter virtualvegfest.com. Shop our vendors while you're there. They really appreciate it. They're still recovering from 2020. And we're going to do everything we can to help everyone jumpstart and do well this year, so that we hopefully never go through something like that again. And that reminds me, wear your masks, get vaccinated. Fans, vaccinated people aren't dying right now. Unvaccinated people are. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that vaccines are working, and I really want you to be around so that we can see you and you can, come to the events or just live your life and breathe the air. So if you're not well, wear a mask. If you are able, get vaccinated. And other than that, have a great rest of your day. Thursday, subscribe to Virtual Vegfest on YouTube. Swap that. And we'll see you next week. Actually, you'll probably see me over the weekend. We'll definitely go live at the event. Other than that, I'll see you for Virtual Vegfest next week. Monday is Kimberly. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Wake Up and Yoga with Evie. And then I think that's it for next week. See you soon. Bye.